Hello everybody, I hope everybody's well today and having a good day so far, and it's sunny like it is here in Newcastle today. Today we're going to be having a look at the company archive and why you would take one and what it's used for, and also how it's different from your usual daily backup as well there. So I'm Laura, if you haven't heard me before, and I'm going to be hosting the webinar today. We've also got Michael in the background as well, so he's going to be answering any of those questions that you have around the topic there. If you do have any unrelated questions, we will try and answer those too, but we will prioritise the questions on the company archive there first. But do pop them across, as always. Anything we don't get answered on the webinar today, we'll get you an email over later on when it's finished. So just as usual, before we get started, just some housekeeping rules. So your mic will be muted automatically, but you'll see there is a little question icon on the toolbar where you can submit any questions that you may have for myself or Michael. So make sure you just pop them in there and just keep them busy as well. Now, we have recently updated the webinar platform, so it might look a little bit different from the screen that you're seeing there, but the icons, they should just be in the top right-hand corner there. And as always, I'll be including the slides in the handout section there as well, because there is going to be some links at the end which you might find useful. So if you do want to download those, make sure you do that during this session. And there's always a printer-friendly version if you'd like to make notes on there as well. So today we're going to be covering the company archive and things like when and why you would take one, and then also why it's different and how it's different to a backup as well on there. So I'm going to go through some demonstrations, so have a look at how we take an archive on there, and also how you can access the archive and what sort of things you can do from the archive window as well there. And then we'll have just a look at the differences between your backup and things like the clear audit trail, because sometimes I think there is a bit of misconception about what it actually does on there if it removes things out of there, but we're going to have a look at that in a bit more detail too. So first of all, what I want to do is run a poll on there just to get an idea of what people think the archive actually does there. So I'm going to pop that on the screen for you. So that should be shown in a few seconds there. So I just want to understand, or what your understanding of the company archive is. So do you think that it removes old data from your program? Do you think it takes a read-only copy of your data? Or do you think it takes a backup of the data there? So I'll give you a few seconds there just to complete that, just so we can gain an understanding of what you think it is. I see a few coming in there now. Just give it a couple more seconds there, just so everybody can get a chance just to pop their answer on there, and then we can go through that. I think people have stopped doing that now. So I'll end that now and I'll share the results there. Don't worry if you haven't filled it in, it's not a problem on there, but I'm going to end that now. We'll share the results there. So as you should be able to see there, so 15% have said that it removes old data from the program. We've got 69% of people think it takes a read-only copy of your data. And we've got 15% who think it backs up your data. So if you said that it takes a read-only copy of your data, you would be correct there. So you might be thinking, well, I've got a backup, why would I bother taking an archive? But I'm going to cover the differences between them on there. So first of all, what is an archive? So as we just had a look at there, it's a read-only copy of your data as it appears in the program at that point in time. So from when the company started right up until the point that you're taking the archive. So you don't need to set a date. You don't get asked to set a date when you're taking an archive. If you took one today at 2 o'clock, it would be everything from when the company started up until today at 2 o'clock. So it includes your existing logons as well. So that just means that if you wanted to access an archive later down the line, you would need to access that archive using the credentials that you used when you set up that archive or when you took that archive. So if I took an archive, say 3 years ago, and since then I've actually changed my logon password on there, I would need to know what my password was 3 years ago. But don't worry if you think, well, I can't remember what that was 3 years ago. That's all right. It's not a problem. You can get in touch with our technical support guys on there and we can help you retrieve that on there. So it's not a problem if you think you're never going to get back into that. We can help you with that. So it's not an issue on there. But it is just an important point to make. You need to be using the same logon details at the time that archive was taken when you go into that archive. So read only just means that you can't add any new information or edit or delete transactions, but you can remove certain information for GDPR purposes. But just remember, anything that you change in the archive, it doesn't affect the live data and vice versa. So if you change the name of a company in your archive on there, when you log back into your live data, that won't have been changed and vice versa. So anything that you're putting into the program after you've taken that archive, that won't impact the archive that you've taken. When you take an archive as well, it is saved within your data path, making it just easier to access from within Sage 50 accounts. And to access your archive, you don't need to restore anything like you would a backup. So instead, you get instant access to revisit old historical data, figures, and run reports. So it's a bit like opening another company. You just need to be aware that attachments are not included in an archive there. You also need access rights as well to create an archive. So the manager logon has this automatically, but other users may need to have the access rights just from within settings. But I'll show you that in the demonstration as well, so you can have a look and see where that is there. And there is sometimes the misconception that archiving the company will remove all data, but that's not the case. So it doesn't delete anything. It just, as I say, it takes that screenshot of the company at that time. And if you're using remote data access, archives don't sync over remote data access. So if you're connected at using remote data access and another user's taken the archive, you're not going to be able to see that on your PC. However, if you did want to access it, they can take a backup of just the archives and you can restore that into yours on there. And I'll show you that in the demonstration as well. So if it is something that you think, well, actually, somebody in the office took the archive, I need to see it on my PC, you can still do that. And lastly, you would need to have access to Sage 50 accounts to access your archive as well. So when might you take an archive? So you can take an archive at any point in time. There's no limit to how many times you take one, but we strongly recommend to take one prior to running things like the year-end process and any time that you clear the audit trail. So the clear audit trail on there, that's when you clear out sort of older records on there. So you may run a clear audit trail straight after running the year end. If you do that and you've already taken an archive before the year end was run there, you wouldn't need to take another one. But if, say, you were to run a clear audit trail in the middle of your financial year, we'd always say to take an archive and a backup prior to this. But I've attached links here to both those guides too. So you've got the how to complete the year end, and we are running through those webinars at the moment as well. And also the clear audit trail. So if you do want any more information on those, I've attached those guides on there for you. But we've also got webinars coming up which cover these topics in the first week of February. And you can sign up for those on the link on the slides as well. So if you do want to have a look at that, that may be worth getting yourself signed up for. So I'll pop into my system now. We'll have a look at it in the program there, just so you can see how that works. So if I just change to my screen there, so you can see my 50 accounts there. So as we've looked at, we might take an archive at the end of the financial year or before you clear the audit trail. So that's when you're clearing out your older records, or before you make any significant data changes like the clear audit trail there. You can find the clear audit trail in two different places. So the first one that we'll have a look at is if I click on tools at the very top here, and you'll notice just down at the bottom, I'm logged in as manager here as well. So anything I do logged in as manager on here, and I'm going to show you, I will log in as a different user with partial access so you can see the difference there as well. But if I click on tools, and then I'm going to go to period end, and I'm going to go to year end first of all. That's opened up on my other screen, so I'll just drag that over there. So you can see in here, we've got the various different options, but we've also got the option here to archive the data. And the archive option's always ticked, so when you go to run your year end, you can untick it, but then you're not going to have that archive to refer back to if you needed it on there. So we'd always recommend leaving that ticked so it takes that archive. But if I click on archive location, and I'll just drag that over so you can see this, you're going to be presented with this window on here. So you'll be able to see this is grayed out your path on here because the path's always held in your data location, so you can't change where the archive goes to on there. You can amend the description if you want to, and you can also amend the folder name. So I'm just going to leave it as 2025 because at the moment that's the financial year I'm in at the moment, and I'm just going to call this, we'll just call it mid-year at the moment on there, just so I can change that description on there. And all I'm going to do is click OK if I want to run that archive, if I'm running that as part of my year end on there. So that's the first place that you can see your year end in there. So I'm just going to cancel out with that first of all, because I'm going to show you there's a different way to access that as well. The other reason that you might take an archive is if you clear your audit trail. So I mentioned that before. When you're clearing your audit trail is if you've got a lot of data in the program, you think I've got loads of old records, I need to clear them out. What you would do is take an archive and a backup first of your data. So doing that on there, it just means that say you were being audited and you needed to get back a hold of that data on there, you can go back into, you can give your accountant a copy of your archive data, or you can access that easily to run reports from as well. And as I was saying before, you might think, well, I can do that from a backup. But the difference between a backup is that you would need to wait while that restores into the program. So I don't know how many people have, if you've gone to restore a backup in, you've got to sit and wait while it goes through all of the data on there, especially if you've got a large data set as well, or if you've got your data over a network. So if your data is held on a server, it can take longer that way as well to restore a backup in. The other thing would be is if you have other people logged into the program as well, you would need to get them logged out, because a backup, as you know, it would restore over the live data that you've got in there as well. So opening an archive's very straightforward. So I'm going to show you that first of all, and then I'll get on to having a look at taking that archive as well there. But opening an archive, if we just go to File at the top, and I'm just going to choose Open, and then I'm just going to choose Company Archive. And I've got one that I took earlier on just to show you. So we've got my company archive just in here. Now, if you've ran multiple year ends on there, you might have a big list of them. So I've got my mid-year one here, but you might have other ones that are named year end on there. Now, if you can't see in File and Open Company Archive, the Open Company Archive option, it may be down to your user level on there, which I will come on to. But for the moment, I'm just going to open this company archive just so I can show you what that looks like when we go into it and how easy it is to open a company archive compared to having to restore a backup in there. If I just go to open, so remember you'd have to put in your logon details that were at the time the archive was actually taken. So if it was 3 years ago, you'd be putting in the details from 3 years ago if you haven't changed it. And that's it, I'm in my archive. So you can see how easy that was. If we have a look along the top, it actually tells you the archive that you're in as well. So I'm in archive mid-year 2025 for my company. So I'm no longer just in my live data, but if you had to restore a backup in, if you have to get people logged out, then you've got to find the backup, you've got to restore it in on there. Sometimes it can take a while depending on how fast the speeds are of the computer that you're using as well. So that was super fast just getting into the archive there. So we'll have a look at a few things just within here. So as we can see at the top, it changes the name. So we know we're in the archive, not in the live data. You are limited to the changes that you can make, which are only for GDPR purposes, as I mentioned before. So you can't post anything new in the program. So if I went into bank accounts and thought, well, I needed a bank payment posted in there, if I just try and post a bank payment straight away, I get a message that prevents me from doing it. It tells me that I'm in read-only mode on there and that we're in an archived data set there as well. So it won't let you actually post anything new into the archive. If you needed to sort of make changes just for like I say, the GDPR purposes on there, you can do that. So if we have a look at this top one here, I'm just going to click on that. I'm just going to edit it. I'll just edit the name. I'll take out design services. I'll just leave it as A1. And then I'm just going to click save, close that. It will let me change that. So it'll let me change certain aspects of it on there. But like I say, it is just a read-only copy of the data, and that won't transfer over to my live data, which I'll show you when I pop back into my live data as well. Now, one of the main things which is really good about an archive is you can run your management reports on there. So if you think, right, I actually need my P&L from 3 years ago and you haven't got a copy of it anywhere, if you've got an archive of the company data, all you need to do is log into the relevant year for the archive, so the right archive that you need, say, your P&L for. So if I go into my nominal codes, and I'm just going to click on profit and loss just at the top, and drag this across because it's opened on the other screen, and I'm just going to preview it. Just going to leave the details the same. So that's my financial year, January to December on there. I'm going to run that and preview it, and I'll just open it a bit bigger so you can see it there. And it tells you that it's been run from an archive. So obviously mine hasn't cleared down because mine's a mid-year archive that I've taken, but it tells you this is from an archive, it's about profit and loss, but we know it's not from your live data, it's from an archive on there. So that's a really handy thing if you think, actually, I need those management reports from a couple of years ago. You can just pop into your archive, which you've seen is really quick on there, run your profit and loss, or whichever, whatever reports you want to run from there, and then you can pop back into your live data as well. So it's quite straightforward to do that there. So I've changed the name of one of my customers on here. So to pop back into my live data, it's just as easy on there. So all we do is we go to File at the top again. I'm just going to click on Open, and I'm going to click on Open Company Data. Just gives you that window that tells you it's just going to lose any unsaved data on there. And then it'll prompt me to put in my current logon details. I'll pop those in there. Just has a little think about it, and I'm back in my live data. And we know we're in live data and not on an archive because at the top it doesn't say archive basically at the top. So we're in the live data there now. So if I go into my customers, and that one I changed before, so we had A1 design services. I took out design services. You can see in my live data, it still says A1 design services. So it hasn't pulled that across on there. So anything that you change in your archive won't pull through onto your live data. Now, I did mention that archives don't sync over remote data access. So if you're connected via remote data access and the archive is on a colleague's PC, because that's where they've run the archive, there is another way that you can view them on your PC. So you can get a backup of the archive from whoever's taken it and just restore it into your PC there. So as long as it's just a backup of the archives, it's not going to restore over your data or anything like that. It's just the archive on there. So say you're on your colleague's PC, they can see their archive. To take an archive only backup, if we just go to File at the top, and I'm just going to choose Backup, we get that window. It's just going to close unsaved data. Just drag that across on there. So when you take a backup, you're presented with this window on here, and you can select which files you want to back up. If you're just wanting a copy of just the archives on there, we can untick everything else. So if I untick the data files, which is the main one that you back up on a day-to-day basis, we can see that company archives, I've got that ticked on there at the moment. So if I take just a backup of just the company archives on there, so I can say, you can browse to wherever. I'm just going to leave my location the same so I know where it is on there. But if I just take just a backup on there, you'll get a warning. It'll just tell you that it's not included any data files as part of the backup. And that's absolutely fine. It just means that next time you come to take a backup, if you haven't changed that, you'll be prompted just to put those data files in there. But for the purpose of the demonstration and for what you would be taking the backup for, we're just going to leave that and say, yes, that's fine. I just want those archives. And it was just running on the other piece, on the other screen. I'll just drag that over. So what it's doing is it's quite quick on mine, because you can see down in the bottom here, I don't have a huge data set. It might take a few more minutes on yours, but essentially it's taken that snapshot of absolutely everything in my company from when I first started it up until 19 minutes past 2, which is right now when I've taken that particular archive. So I'm just going to say OK to that, and that's that taken. When you're back on your PC, if you're just wanting to restore that in, it's just like restoring a backup in there. So all you'd be doing is they would send you that backup of the archives. We're going to go to File at the top, and we're just going to choose Restore. Of course, it's opened on the other window. I'll just pull that over, and you're presented with this screen. So if you've ever restored a backup in, you would know, obviously, take a backup before you restore anything in. That's always just good practice on there. But for this purpose, I'm just going to browse to the location of my backup, and this is where I popped it here. So that is my archive that I've just taken there. So we can see that it was taken at 19 minutes past 2. So if I click open just to show you, and I'm not going to restore it in because it's the backup I've taken on this one, but you can see here it tells you that it's a backup of just the company archives. Now, if it included anything else in there, like data files or report layouts or anything in there, it would list them all in here. So we know that this is just a backup of the company archives. You can then restore that into your PC, and then you can then view those archives at your end if you want to. But that's just if it's over the remote data access on there, just because they don't sync over remote data access, because it's another set of your company data. So if you think of it trying to sort of upload that over the internet when you're logged into it on there, it can slow things down a bit for you depending on your internet speeds. So that's the main reason for them not syncing over remote data access there. So another question that we've had before is, if my archive's on an earlier version, can I view it? You can, yes. So what will happen is, if you restore it in, you'll get a message just to say it was on an earlier version. It'll just convert that data for you onto the version that you're on there. So if you took an archive 3 years ago, chances are you might be on a later version when you go to restore it in. It'll just update that for you. Just then you can get into it and have a look. So the second place that you can take an archive, and you might have seen it when I popped into it before, if I go to Tools at the top, and if I go to Period End again, so the first place was in Year End, just below it, Archive Company. So if I click on that, drag that over there, and you can see I've got my archive on there. So again, that's set on there because that's your data path. You can change the description. So say you'd ran a clear audit trail, you might want to put in mid-year after clear audit trail on there. And what you will notice on there is that it does have a limit on the characters. What we'll do is we'll abbreviate on there. So we'll clear audit trail. Okay. So if I click OK to that, you can change the name of the folder if you want to as well on there. I'm just going to leave it as it is though. But all I'm going to do is just click OK to that, and it'll just tell me, obviously it's a lot quicker, smaller data set, but it'll just tell me the archive's being complete on there. I'm just going to click OK to that. So you can see it's really straightforward, but the benefits of being able to take or have the archive on there just means that you don't need to go looking for backups. You don't need to restore anything in. You don't need to get other people logged out while you're restoring backups in to check something. You literally just go into File and go to Open an Open Company Archive, and you're presented with the window, and you can choose your archive from there, from where, if you're wanting to run reports, or if you're wanting to just check something from a few years ago, and you might have run that clear audit trail, and you can see there's my after my clear audit trail one that I've just taken there too. The other quick thing that I'll mention as well is, if obviously I'm logged in as manager, but if I'm just going to log in with a different username. So if I go to log off, File and log off there, and I'm just going to log on as myself, just to show you the difference on there. So you can see you've got username Laura down at the bottom now. If I go to File at the top, and I want to go, I'm just going to have a look at the archives on there. I don't have Open Company Archive anymore. It's not showing in there. If I go to Tools, and if I go to Period End, I also don't have to take that company archive on there. You would still have the option from within year end, although if you've got somebody who only has partial access on they might not be running the year end, but they still have that, just because we would never want anybody running the year end without having that option to take that archive, because it is important to take the archive on there. But just a mid-year archive or to view an archive, I don't actually have the access on there. So I'll pop back into Manager, and I'll just show you where you can change those settings. So if you did have somebody that thought, well, I can't see that, where is it on there? Just going to log back in as manager. You see now down at the bottom there that I'm logged in as manager. And I'm just going to pop into settings at the top, user management and users. And we'll get this window which tells us, it just gives us the users on there. So I'm logged in as manager at the moment. You can see Laura username's just got partial access. If I just highlight that, and I'm just going to click on edit, and we'll have a look just at my level of access that I've got in here. So if I scroll down, there's two different places. It's set up slightly differently. So the first one, we went to tools, and then we went to period end. And then we had the option to archive a company underneath the year end. That's not ticked on there. If I tick that, and if we have a look under file, so the other place that we had a look was file, and then being able to open a company archive. I couldn't do that logged in as Laura. If I tick that, and then I'm just going to finish and just save those details there, that will then allow me to be able to then view the archive. And so if we pop back in as myself on there, I'll just log back off and log back in as Laura on there just to show you. So it just means that if you've got users that you think, actually, I don't want them being able to have access to the archives on there, you can actually just remove that. So they could still take an archive, but you could remove it so they can't actually view the archive on there. So if I go to view on there, file, and then open, and then I've got my option, I can view company archive again. So that there's two separate places in there, as you can see. And then we've also got tools, period end, and I can now archive the company just mid-year if I wanted to, and that's logged in as the Laura username there. Okay, so it's just those two settings in there. So I'll pop back to my slides there. I'll just see if Michael's just answering those questions. He looks like he's on top of those questions there, so that's good. So we'll pop back to these on here. So in summary, for your archive on there, it takes that read-only copy of your data and stores it within your data path. So you open it like a separate company. So as you can see there, it's really easy. You just change, it's like changing company basically, but it doesn't remove any transactions or any data from your live company. You also don't need to specify a date to run the archive either. So like we saw there, I took one at 19 minutes past 2, and that takes all of the data from the start of the company up until 19 minutes past 2 today. So a backup, that again takes a copy of your data, which can be saved anywhere that you wish. So you're not sort of limited as to where it goes. It doesn't need to be your data path. You can put that anywhere. Your backup's designed to be restored over the program, so into the program, sorry, over the top of your live data, or as a separate company, or if your license allows you to do so, if you've got a separate company on there. And once it's restored in, you can edit, delete, and add new information in there. I'd always say that if you are going to restore over the top of any live data, just do it with caution. So if you're going to restore something in, you're not 100%, just take a backup first of all, because if you've got a backup of where you are at the moment and you restore the wrong thing in, you can always get back to it. So as long as you've got a backup, you can't really go far wrong there. And then we've got the clear audit trail. So your clear audit trail is a process to remove older transactions, to remove or to reduce, the size of your data. And it just keeps things tidier and more organized on there. So for the clear audit trail, you would enter a date that you want to clear up to. So for example, if you wanted to keep the last 6 years worth of your data, you'd be entering a chosen date, and anything before that would be removed, just given that it fits into the criteria on there for the clear audit trail. But we are going to be running sort of specific webinars for the clear audit trail and clearing records as well. So if you do want a bit more information on that, because they're the whole webinar sort of in themselves on there, we're going to be running the clear audit trail processes on Wednesday, the 4th of February at 2 o'clock. So make sure that you get signed up for that. But there is going to be a link on your follow-up email there, so you'll get access to be able to sign up for those as well. So I've added a link in here just to the guides on there as well for archiving your company. So it just reiterates what I've been through there, just how you can access it really easily, why it's a good idea to take that, and obviously the step-by-step process there as well for it. But for anything else that you might be looking for, I've obviously included another link on there just to our help centre, so you can access all of our webinars, both live and all the recordings there. You've also got things on there like your guides and your Sage University on there as well. But there's also a separate guide, which I popped on a link there just for backing up your data. So if you're thinking, well, I just want to have a look at both of them for the differences on there, I've popped links on there for both of them. So I'll keep this open a little bit longer. So just while Michael finishes answering those last few questions there, so I can see that he looks like he's on top of them there. Don't forget that you're also going to get a recording of today's session there in around about an hour's time by email. So if you do want to watch that back at your own pace or give it to a colleague to watch, then that'll be available there for you too. And just having a quick look there just to see. So you're just checking through the messages on there as well. Somebody's just asking if you can archive your data remotely. If you're using remote data access, you can take an archive of the data on there, but obviously it'll be on the computer that you're on there. So other people are, I think it's Maureen that's popped that in there. Other people won't be able to see that archive, but you can take an archive if you're using it remotely there. So you can also access our recordings page at sage.co.uk there as well. All the past recordings are free to view there, along with signing up for your upcoming webinars on there as well. So like things like your clear audit trail on there as well, which I mentioned. So you can get that on that link there too. And then just a quick reminder as well, just about our one-to-one bespoke training sessions that we've got. So the block hour sessions, which are over Teams with one of our trainers, and they just provide training and answer your questions around how you want to use the software. So if you've got new starters starting maybe, or if you think, actually, I'm going to be starting to use something separately on there, it might be worth getting in touch with us and, just to make sure that you're using it in the most useful way on there. But if you pop us an email across, just at that email address on the screen there, that lsenablement1@365sage.net, and then we can get back in touch with you just to go through that with you. But it looks like Michael's on top of the questions there. I can't see any more that have come in that are unanswered there. So that does bring us to the end of today's session. So I hope that you have found that useful and you can see the benefit around taking an archive and how it's just different from taking that regular backup, and how you can just pop back into it really easily there just to check figures, run reports if you want to, and see historical data as well there. But as always, you'll get that survey when leaving today's session. So I'd love it if you could leave us any feedback, or if there's any comments around what else you'd like to see on a webinar, perhaps if you thought, actually, I would like a bit more information on that. Could you run a webinar on that perhaps? Then definitely pop that in the notes on there as well. If you pop it in the comments, because we read every comment that comes through as well there. So we always appreciate any feedback or anything that you'd like to see there. But for now, thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day there.